Welcome to a ranking of Bob Marley's albums from worst to best. Here where I am right now, it is overcast, it is cloudy, and I have friends and family who say don't play Bob Marley when it's cloudy and like that. Playing when it's sunny or you're on an island or on a beach or something. That's when you play Bob Marley. Bob Marley can be played any time of the day, any time of the year. He is a master. So grab your Apple Music, Spotify, your vinyl, CDs, whatever you want to do to listen along with me as we go through his albums. Starting with number 9, we have the 1980 album Uprising. As far as I know, this was the last album that Bob Marley saw to its completion and had a hand in its completion. And you can tell on this album that Marley is ill, that he's tired. It doesn't quite have the same charisma as some of his earlier work, and you can't blame him after going on such an incredible run in the 70s. Yet in this album, he still puts out Could You Be Love and one of his all-time greats, Redemption Song. And those are on the back half of the album. The album is a little backloaded with a stronger material in the back. And so I may upset some of the Bob Marley fandom by saying this is his worst album. But again, I think it feels a little more tired and spent than some of his better albums. And that's why I have it coming in last at number 9. Number 8 is the album Confrontation. This was a posthumous album released in 1983 after the death of Marley. So it's sort of a weird collection of songs with a lot of moving parts. And many, for this reason, would just completely skip over this album. But there is plenty of quality here to justify its existence. Speaking of, you probably know the song Buffalo Soldier. Growing up with Legend, that was one of my favorite songs from his greatest hits. And I think it's probably the best track here. But there is some other great tracks here. I love Chant Down Babylon. I love Rastaman Live Up. That is an incredible track. And while it is kind of a slapdish of odds and ends collection, I still prefer it over the true send-off, which is Uprising. I still think this has stronger material, so that is why it comes in at number 8. Number 7, Rastaman Vibrationist. Okay, I won't do that again. Rastaman Vibration. This is an incredible album. Sandwiched between Naughty Dread and Exodus. It is sort of the forgotten brother in between those much bigger albums. It doesn't have the giant hits. It was not as commercially successful as those albums. And yes, I don't think it's nearly as good as those albums, but it's such a fun listen. The vibe and ethos is strong. What I was singing coming in, positive vibration, roots, rocks, reggae. Excellent 1-2 punch to start off the albums. One of his best 1-2 punches in my estimation. Following songs are nice enough, but I think it doesn't get of equal quality until you get to the last 2 songs, War and Rat Race, which again are up there with the best songs from this album. This means it's not like a lost classic that a lot of people would hype it up to be, but it's definitely not the worst of Marley's albums. It's definitely not unnecessary or inconsequential. And also, if you are working a night job, Night Shift is the perfect song for you. So blare that loud if you're working a night shift right now. Number 6 is 1979 album Survival. And some say this album was released by Marley as a criticism that Kaya was too apolitical, that Kaya was too feel good, and Survival was meant to be his sort of political justice album. But knowing Marley, who wrote Punky Reggae Party in response to the punk and new wave movement, I don't see him caring a lot about narratives about him or his music. I feel like he was led by something greater and not what, the industry or the fans were thinking about his work. And in that way, it reminds me a lot of Rastaman Vibration, in that there's a focused sound to this, and it doesn't have the major hits that ended up on Legend. Yet I think it's probably his most consistent album post Exodus. It has So Much Trouble in the World, and it has Zimbabwe, which is my favorite track from the album. I'm tempted to sing it right now. I'm not going to do that, but I'm tempted to. They both open the album with a dour tone to it, right? It's not a feel-good song. It's a dour tone, but Marley sort of keeps that sort of ethos throughout the whole album. Africa Unite, One Drop. These are charged political songs, but they are still super catchy, right? Because you'll be singing them in your head all day when you get into it. So Survival, I would put this on the list as his most underrated album. No, it's not as good as his classics. But I think it still should be listened to by every Marley fan. Do not sleep on Survival. Number 5 is Kaya. Now, Kaya was made from the sessions of Exodus, but don't mistake that for it's a bunch of B-sides or toss-offs. But rather, this song is more of the feel-good vibe, and I can totally see Marley not feeling comfortable putting these tracks on Exodus to help Exodus round out more of the political charge sides of the feel-good hits. But Kaya is sort of full feel-good. And in fact, some days I wonder if Is This Love is the best Marley song of all time. It is the ultimate feel-good song to me, but it also has some great musical intricacies, right? If you listen to that whole song, just keep coming back to it, and it just has little things here and there that add to make that such a good song. Again, I'm tempted to sing it. I will not. All right, Satisfy My Soul, easy skanking, right? These have that same effect, a feel-good vibe, good vibes, laid-back production, super easy to listen to. I do think After She's Gone, which, again, that's a gem of a track, it's a weak stretch of music, probably up to Marley's career in that point, and so it's a little bit of a letdown from the strongest points of the album. But there's still enough quality here that I think this is the best of the post-Exodus albums. Again, it and Survival are neck and neck. Both great albums, very good albums, but not quite in that upper echelon tier. Number 4 is Burnin. This is the 1973 follow-up to Catch a Fire. This is the last album with the Wailers on it. I know your album will say Bob Marley and the Wailers. This is the last album with Wailers on it. Now, trying to remove spirituality from Bob Marley's music is like trying to separate flour from bread or milk from ice cream. Marley is not like your latest Grammy singer to thank God for their award, but spirituality and scripture is deeply ingrained in everything he is doing. And on Burnin especially, it comes out because if you find the amount of Psalms and Proverbs and scriptural references in this album, it is incredible. He's got something almost in every song. The biblical allusions is many. So it'd be an interesting experiment just to go down and see how many there are, but they are all over this album. And so it's delivered hand on hand with this call for social action, and it's the unifying thing of getting and standing up and dancing as well. So Marley takes the role as a prophet on this album, as do all of the Wailers. And so the hits here are great, but listening to some of these tracks on a live album, they feel a little more lifeless after you have heard them on that album. Due to that, the back half of the album has slowly become my favorite. Put It On, Dupe Conqueror, Small Axe. These tracks have such a rootsy vibe to them, and such like a natural, they're not really pop at all, but that natural reggae to them, that I love it. I love this album. Burnin is the one that has the potential to move up in these rankings, and sometimes I wonder if it is better than his big three, but for now, I have it at number 4. Number 3, Naughty Dread. Okay, so now the Wailers were on the first 2 albums, but Peter Tosh and Livingston, they are not on the Naughty Dread album. They are out of the lineup, and the singing group I3s are in. And so while something is certainly lost, I think, of that kind of rootsy sound the first 2 albums have, Marley's charisma is still on full display. His songwriting chops are on full display, and I think some of his best songs are on Naughty Dread. So something is lost, but Marley is able, right, to carry on and carry on to superstardom. So No Woman, No Cry is the best and most well-known song here. It's a very good track, even though the live version has eclipsed it at this point of what people know and recognize. I still appreciate the studio version. Lively Up Yourself, Them Bellyful are not as famous, but they're almost just as good as No Woman, No Cry. You could say it is a top-heavy and a bottom-heavy album with the middle track sagging, but that's a couple of minutes, maybe a couple minutes drag time for an overall excellent front-to-back album. Talking Blue, I think, is the underrated track here. A really soulful, good song. Revolution provides a lot of heart. The guitar work on Revolution is great. The falsetto voice of Marley at the end is excellent. Again, he just had a feel and a vibe with his tracks. It doesn't even seem like he's trying, but he makes it work. So the best songs overshadow the very good songs. But when that happens, you know you're listening to a great album. Naughty Dread is a great album. Number 2 is Exodus. Now, I remember being a young chap. I had enough money in quarters saved up to buy one record. It was between Bob Marley's Legend and Aerosmith's album. I can't remember what it was called, but it was the one that had Jaded on it, and I liked that from the radio, so I was deciding what to do. And my older brother recommended Bob Marley. Shout out to him. And so I went to the store for Bob Marley, but I came across a dilemma. I saw Exodus and I saw Legend, and I saw Exodus had like half of the tracks that were on Legend. So I didn't know which one to get. Well, I got Legend. Great choice as a young person just getting into music. One of the best greatest hits collections of all times. But then in later years, after I got more into Marley and came back to Exodus, I didn't think I was going to like it as much, because those the Three Little Birds, I'm jamming. I like those tracks, but they weren't my favorite from Legend, and so I thought I wouldn't like Exodus as much. But as time has gone on, this album keeps going up and up in my estimation. Originally, I thought it was just kind of like a semi-greatest hits package. But the more I listen to it, Natural Mystic opening with that sort of fade in opening, that guitar work on Heathen, so much things to say. I love that song. It's soulful, it's political, but it's super catchy. It's just such a good song. And then Exodus, I thought that song originally just goes on forever and was sort of boring, but man, I love how it develops the more I listen to it. My favorite version of it is on the Babylon live album, but I love that song on whatever iteration it has. And I think listening to it as a whole album, those hits on the back half are mirrored perfectly with the more political and pointed first half of the album. Truly incredible. Many days I think it may be his best album, but for right now I can't quite put it at number one. Because for number one I have Bob Marley's Catch a Fire. It is let me get the right date. It's 1973, so same year as Burnin that came out. And I had someone once tell me that once I listened to the Toots and the Maytals and other contemporary reggae artists, Marley wouldn't sound as revolutionary or as powerful once I heard his contemporaries. And I don't mean to rag on those groups or disrespect them in any way, but Marley is so far ahead of the game that it's difficult to put other contemporaries in the same conversation. Because this, remember, is the Wailers' fifth album, but it's their first album on Island, and it's really the beginning of Bob Marley taking center stage of the band. And if you listen to some of that early music compared to Catch a Fire, you see just what Marley is adding. It is this kind of charisma, this beautiful voice, but just this vibe that he just knew where to go with the music and had a sense of what would connect with people. And Catch a Fire is one of the only albums where outside studio meddling with the album actually helped it. So the corporation wanted to make the Wailers' rootsy reggae more palatable to rock audiences. So you have a lot of overdubs on this album mixed in with the original recordings. But when you listen to the original and the album we got, I think what we got is the better version. The transcendent guitar on Concrete Jungle, one of my favorite guitar solos. Stir It Up and Midnight Ravers just has kind of that hybrid reggae rock sound, and maybe it's just where I'm coming from that I prefer this, but I just think it's a match made in heaven. And so you have a real soulful, rootsy reggae sound, but you also have some awesome harmonies and guitar work and some of kind of the expectations that the rock audience had at that time. It's a true classic in the genre, a classic of the 70s, one of my favorite albums of the decade. And again, it goes back to Marley. I think he is almost fully formed at this point. And he transforms even more and more into a superstar, but he had it here musically in the beginning, and that's why Catch a Fire is my number one Bob Marley and the Wailers record album.